Welcome to This Week in Wrestling History.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Wrestling History. We're your hosts, Jacob,
Yo.
and Ryan. This week we actually have a good WCW pay-per-view to cover.
What?
I know, it's not like us to cover one of the good WCW ones, and it's from the 90s even, which...
It was a good 90s WCW That's not right.
So...
That can't be a thing.
It's going to be Spring Stampede, 1994, and it comes in a very weird time in WCW history. So, this is fairly recently after Eric Bischoff actually took over as executive VP, before they actually even had Nitro or the Monday Night Wars even began. It's even just before Hogan came in. So, this pay-per-view is really good because it's a lot of what WCW was kind of known for in their glory days, a lot of kind of hard-hitting wrestling, but it was done by some of their newer stars, quote-unquote. It's not yet the international guys. They're not bringing anyone from AAA or CMLL. It's only one of their Japanese stars. It's really none of the cruiserweights yet, but there's a lot of talent on this show, and it'll be interesting as we get to it. I don't want to go over it right yet, but the guys that would end up jumping ship and becoming major players over in WWE, we're getting really close to that point in time where a lot of jumping to the other company starts happening.
Yeah, and like you had said, this was before Nitro. This was before Hogan showed up and kind of started swaying WCW to being a pseudo WWF.
Right, as they made... We've covered the Dungeon of Doom stuff that kind of came with Hogan, not at first, but eventually came to be kind of Hogan's major antithesis.
Well, the other thing, too, is it's kind of funny to see WCW go almost full circle, because we talked about Greed a couple of weeks ago, and Greed was essentially a soft reboot that they were attempting that would have driven them back to essentially this.
Greed was midway through their soft reboot. Yeah, they'd actually come out a little bit before Greed at... All right, I'm going to get beaten up over this one because I don't remember the event, but it was the infamous event where Hogan versus Jarrett happened, and Hogan stormed out of the company, and no one really knows what officially happened, but Hogan left the company, would sue the company when Vince Russo came out and cut that nasty promo against him.
Yeah,
and
Jarrett laid down for him.
Right, and that's kind of their official quote-unquote reboot period. Also, I think it was at New Blood Rising in 99 was kind of their... Mm-hmm. When they tried to do the Millionaires Club versus the New Blood was their quote-unquote attempt at a reboot, and then... Anyways. So yeah, this one was just... It was a really good pay-per-view, kind of in the middle of nothing, a little bit of a transitional period. Like I said, it was really good.
Yeah, there weren't any real stinkers on the match. It was all kind of... the worst match on the card was still, okay.
Exactly, and it was the opening match that we'll get to in just a minute here. And it was still all right. It was decent. It was by far the worst card on the match, but it was still decent.
All right, you want to jump into it?
Yeah, let's get into it since we kind of set it up here already. So you want to tell us who was in this match?
So this was Johnny B. Bad, a.k.a. Mark Marrow.
Yep, who would go on to become Mark Marrow within about 2 years, and that's going to be a familiar time period here in a few minutes.
And to be honest, I don't remember who he wrestled. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, that's DDP.
Oh, that's right. Fat DDP.
Right, Fat DDP. So
before the yoga kicked in. This
was very early into DDP's singles run, I believe. He used to have the Diamonds. So DDP was originally a manager before he was a wrestler, and he managed, I think, 2 singles guys that probably tagged it often. I forget the first one, but the second was the Diamond Stud, a.k.a. Scott Hall, a.k.a. Razor Ramon, as he was being known as right now over in WWF.
I did not know that, to be honest. I didn't know Scott Hall was anything other than Razor and Scott.
Oh, no, yeah, he was the Diamond Stud originally. over here in WCW. So that's where Hall and Nash originally met, was in WCW.
Oh,
And then they kind of jumped ship together.
interesting.
So, right, as we said, this was kind of the worst match on the card, and it wasn't bad still. It was just, DDP was not in great shape yet. He was old. He was still older for a guy at this point in time before he really made it.
I mean, when he first came into WCW, he was in his, 30s?
Mid-30s, yeah.
Which, I mean, for then was old.
Right. At this day and age, it's less of a deal, but he was older. He wasn't as good as he would become. He was definitely playing his heel douchey character. He had Kimberly with him at this point in time. As we covered, I want to say about a month and a half ago at this point, that awful pay-per-view with the Dungeon of Doom.
Oh, yeah.
In 96, I believe it was,
Mm-hmm.
where it was actually supposed to be the final blow-off match between these two, but that's when Mark Marrow had actually left the company to go
Yeah.
to WWF at the time.
So, real quick, he had two teams that he managed.
Okay.
He managed Bad Company with Paul Diamond and Pat Tanaka.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Yeah. And then he started handling... Oh, he also managed Colonel De Beers.
That's the diamond gimmick that revolves around this guy is awful sometimes.
Kurt Hennig.
Okay, so Mr. Perfect,
Yep. And Medusa Miceli
a.k.a. Medusa.
as the leader of the Diamond Exchange stable.
There we go, the Diamond Exchange. Yeah. That's the thing. Then I guess Scott Hall would come in later at some point. I know they were involved with each other. I know Scott Hall was the Diamond Stud. Maybe they weren't involved, but I would assume with those names they had to be.
Yeah, I don't see anything.
You see nothing?
to be
All right.
honest.
Fair enough. I could totally be making all this up.
Oh, wait, there it is. Added Scott Hall to the stable under the name Diamond Stud.
Haha. All right. I was not wrong. Good.
Falkenberg added him.
Falkenberg?
Yep.
Paige Falkenberg.
Yes. Yes. That's what it was.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So, anything really to cover in this match? Anything terribly spectacular?
I mean, I'm kind of surprised at how good a shape Marrow was in for this.
Mark Marrow's always been in ridiculous shape.
And that, speaking of that bridge out that he does, was kind of impressive because it was from a flat back position. DDP didn't really help him at all. He just whoop straight up.
Yeah. As we said, this was the worst match on the card, but it was still decent. And this was probably better than anything at the last pay-per-view of theirs we covered on Greed.
Right.
Well, maybe not better than anything, but it would have outclassed a lot of things on that show.
Oh, definitely. It was kind of funny to see Mark Marrow with long hair and almost essentially a knockoff poor man's Rick Rude.
No, poor man's... Oh, I'm not going to remember the character. Flamboyant Little Richard.
Ah, okay.
That's exactly who the character was supposed to be. It was basically a wrestling Little Richard.
Yeah,
which
okay.
A really weird way to go with things, but
I mean, it makes sense now that I see it.
well, that's why his knockout punch was called the Tutti Frutti.
Wait, really?
Yep.
I did not hear that when...
Oh, they mention it, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Actually, let's go back a second. I liked the announce team for this. It was just a simple two-man booth.
Which is always better than a three-man.
Right. It was Tony Schiavone and Bobby the Brain Heenan.
I was pleasantly surprised at how well, or how good Tony Schiavone is.
When it was just the two of them and he was into it, it was good. And then they had Mean Gene and Jesse Ventura as backstage kind of guys doing interviews.
Which, can we just talk about Jesse Ventura's stupid hair?
Yeah, Jesse was with that stupid shaved head with just a rat tail, basically.
It was like he shaved off... He had a mullet and shaved everything from the party in the back forward off.
Right. It was just a rat tail with a shaved head.
But it covered like from ear to ear on the back of his head.
Oh,
It
did
wasn't.
it?
It wasn't just a single rat tail.
Oh, I thought it was just one spot in the back.
No.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was weird.
So he had a skullet pulled into a ponytail.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
never a good look. So one other thing I want to mention is they had Aaron Neville as the opening act singing America the Beautiful, or
He did poop.
I hate Aaron Neville.
He was awful.
I just don't care for his singing style with the
Yeah, no, it was awful.
Yeah.
And then seeing
he
him
keeps modulating the pitch of his voice whenever he's singing, and it takes the guy like 9 years to get through a 3-minute song.
and then occasionally you'll see him sitting next to Bobby Heenan and like laughing at some of the jokes that they make.
Which I kind of appreciated. Every once in a while, Bobby would stop and kind of suck up to Aaron Neville, and it was really kind of funny. So points to Bobby for making chicken salad out of chicken shit for that one.
Mm-hmm.
All right, anyways, back to the match. Mero wins it with what was actually his finish, which is a diving sunset flip off the top rope.
Which seems very complicated and
Right. It's a tough one to set up because you have to do something to a standing guy, but he already has to kind of be doubled over, and you're really going to have to double the guy over for a long time to give you time to go climb up the ropes, and it's a little contrived, but that's a hell of a thing to do, is a diving sunset flip.
yeah.
So
I just noticed this now. I'm going to have to bring this up later on. The rule about going over the top rope. Explain that to me one more time.
So WCW went through a couple different phases of having really silly rules. They had two major ones, I'll say. At one point in time, and I'm pretty sure by this point in time we're past that phase, it was illegal to perform a move off the top rope. You would get DQ'd if you came off the top rope.
Dumb.
And at this point in time, the rule you're talking about is it was illegal to throw your opponent over the top rope to the floor.
But it was okay for you to go over the top rope to the floor.
Yes, you could slingshot yourself over the top rope,
Okay.
but you just couldn't throw your opponent over the top rope.
Okay.
So we discussed this a little bit earlier, and I know you really disliked this rule because it seems dumb.
Well, why don't we save it and talk about it for the
When it
later
comes
match?
up.
Because
Fair, yeah, I know.
I'll explain my point as to why I think it's dumb for this person.
Fair enough. Okay. So, yeah, Johnny B. Bad wins. Again, nothing to write home about. The worst match on the card, but still a decent little match.
I probably would have given it a solid C+, B-.
Yeah. About to say, if I was giving it a number grade, 70 to 75.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right. Up next, we had our first of 4 championship matches tonight. It was for the WCW World Television Championship, and we had the champion, Lord Steven Regal, with Sir William, fighting Brian Pillman.
Yeah, this was fun. I liked this match a lot.
I really didn't appreciate Regal back in the day because I really liked his gimmick of this noble blue blood that just fights like a barroom brawler.
Yeah.
Like, he was definitely skilled, and he could do submission holds and kind of those typical classical wrestling things, but he could fight like a mother effer.
Yeah, and he was rare in it. Everything that he threw looked like it was connecting and looked like it hurt.
Exactly. He made things look snug.
He was, even if the other person wasn't selling for him, he could still make it look like, oh, damn, like that had to have hurt a little bit.
Yeah, and again, going back to the previous WCW show we had covered in 96, when his match versus Finlay,
Yeah.
which was absolutely brutal. But this was a much different style match. It was much more technical, but still brutal at points.
Mm-hmm.
Pillman, obviously, with more of the high-flying, quicker-pace stuff. Regal with the slower, mat-based, grind him out, pummel him down type stuff.
Yeah, it was definitely a clash of styles, but it was entertaining. Out of all of the matches on the card, I think this and the match for the U.S. heavyweight title was my favorite.
That's fair. So this was also a weird point in time for these two gentlemen in WCW. Regal had a really long run in WCW. I want to say it went from 92, 93 until about 99. I think that was the first time he actually jumped over to WWF. He had stable upon stable upon stable, basically. He had this where he had Sir William Soon after this, Sir William would leave, and he would end up with a tag team with Bobby Eaton, and they would be called the Blue Bloods, and that stable would actually expand a little bit.
That's the one that we had seen last time, right?
Correct.
The early form of that.
Yes. So that was and the Blue Bloods would actually be the stable that Triple H would show up for a little bit in.
Yeah, that's when he
WCW.
Was that when he was terrorizing?
He was terrorizing for 1 week, possibly 2 weeks. Those were never supposed to be shown on TV, as it would turn out. And then he would change his name, but I don't remember to what. I almost think it was Hunter Hearst Helms, but I know it wasn't Hunter Hearst Helms.
I don't think
it may
feasibly could have been.
It may have just been Jean-Paul Levesque.
So, again, it was always interesting to see Pillman, who isn't a small man,
No.
kind of doing stuff that he probably shouldn't have been able to do at his size.
Right. He wasn't a cruiserweight, but he was a light heavyweight. So kind of more someone like AJ Styles size.
Yeah, that's fair. And it was Jean-Paul Levesque.
All right. Got it. So that's it. So he went close to his full actual proper name. So, anywho, Brian. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about Pillman was this was actually after his time in the Hollywood Blondes. Him and Stunning Steve Austin. This was after they were together. They got broken up by, I believe it's when Colonel Robert Parker got involved in things.
Yes, because then that's when he ended up kind of tagging along with Austin.
Yep. So yeah, he formed his own stable of the annoying people managed by Parker. Anyways, not a lot to. I don't really have a ton to say about the match. It was really good. They kind of did the annoying thing in WCW around this time, where that was kind of the whole gimmick of the TV title was every match had a 15-minute time limit, and typically they went to it.
Yeah, and that was a very disappointing ending to a overall good match.
Right, and the problem was after about 13 or 14 minutes, you could kind of figure where this thing was going because, they have a 15-minute time limit, and we're not quite at a finish yet, so what's going to happen is, with about 10 seconds left, our hero is going to hit a giant move, but not quite be able to get the cover in time, and then they'll finally, they'll miss it by, 2 to 3 seconds, basically.
Yeah, and the other thing that I disliked, too, was the random, over the PA system, 5 minutes have passed.
I think that's probably a little bit more because you haven't watched a lot. That was totally common during the television title matches.
To me, it doesn't matter. Even if I had watched all of the TV matches, I don't think I would have ever liked that. I don't like when you have a time limit set for a match and you announce points of time.
So it's meant to add a sense of urgency to it a little bit and to keep the fans kind of quote-unquote informed. It's nice that, like I said, about the TV title, it's nice that there's sort of a continuity with that, whereas opposed to we've been to events where no time limit was necessarily, or they would announce a time limit on one match only randomly, and suddenly they would have... It's really annoying when it's not a consistently done thing because then you suddenly know that's going to be the end to the match when it's done at the start.
Yeah, I get that. But then we have matches like the Beat the Clock challenges that they do on WWE every now and then. If you're going to do something like that, put the damn time up on a screen for people to see.
Okay, this was 1994. They didn't have stuff like that yet.
They have a screen in the background where they're showing what's going on in the ring.
I'm pretty sure it's a static. I don't think they're showing it to the crowd. I think that's a static image.
No, there's one off to the side. I was just looking at it because Regal was flopping around on it.
All right, maybe.
So if you can do it to the point where it shows up in the corner of the screen for people watching, you can do it where it's showing up on a screen in the back somewhere.
Meh. Agree to disagree on that one. But I wouldn't even say I necessarily like it. It just doesn't offend me. So
it offends me terribly.
That's fair. Like many things do.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we had... I don't know if these guys... guys that were the WCW tag champs or not. I don't think this was for the tag belts.
It wasn't for the tag belts, but
I think the Nasty Boys were the tag champs.
Tag champs,
Okay.
yes.
So it was a Chicago street fight. Thankfully, they were actually in Chicago, so the name made sense. It was the Nasty Boys versus Cactus Jack and Max Payne.
And man, that some of the stuff in this match hurt.
Yeah. So shockingly, with Cactus Jack, a.k.a. Mankind, a.k.a. Mick Foley, some of the stuff he did was just awful. We had talked about it previously way back in Cactus Jack's first pay-per-view with Mil Mascaras.
Yeah, when he
Did the old Nestea plunge.
Ugh.
And in this case, he basically did it again where he took a bump. Oh, that's what we'll mention. This was one of my favorite things WCW did that WWF didn't do. They had the entry ramp that came right up to the ring.
Oh, the raised ramp.
Yeah, the raised ramp. I always liked that.
Yeah, it was definitely different. I
It
know
made their pay-per-views feel different, and it gave a little bit more options to some of the guys in some of the matches that we'll see.
I know New Japan did that for a short time.
Yep, they've done it.
They usually do it at the Wrestle Kingdoms.
I believe it was done at All In.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
All In did it.
It's,
Which I can't call them AEW because they weren't AEW yet, but
well, I mean, you could because it was like the precursor,
right, but it wasn't. So
It-
I'm not going to. So there.
Well, fine, be that way then. But you're right. It does. It gives things a different feel.
Right. It just differentiates things from TV a little bit, especially with how WWE is right now with their Raw and SmackDown entrance ramps being so grand.
And being exactly the same.
Yeah, those are the almost exact same sets they use at their pay-per-views now, and it doesn't really feel any different.
Nope.
It just...
I liked when they had the different set styles for each pay-per-view.
Oh, I loved when they had the different set pieces
Like,
for their pay-per-views.
Like Armageddon was always my favorite. It was like the
King of the Ring was cool, too. With
Armageddon with the skyline of a city that was on fire and falling apart.
Oh, yeah.
It was always pretty solid.
Yeah, and back at TLC when they'd have like the ladders at the entryway and the giant strings of chairs and stuff.
Fucking ladders everywhere.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you. I really liked that stuff. I really like the raised entry ramp that goes right level flush with the ring. I think it's really cool. I think it gives them an extra kind of thing to work with that's still pretty safe to use. And
oh yeah, it's a lot easier for somebody to take a bump over the top rope onto that thing as opposed to going straight to the floor.
Right, you can suplex someone from the inside of the ring to the outside, still have that extra added effect of landing on something that's not padded.
Right.
But without it having to be to the floor.
Right, you're not taking a 3.5 foot drop.
Right, cutting 3.5 feet out of your fall. Anyways, as we said, match ended with Pillman falling just short, as is typical TV title.
We were talking tag match.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. We'd already moved on. All right. Wow, I'm dumb. So, tag match. Hardcore match, essentially. It's called a Chicago Street Fight.
Yeah.
It was a hardcore match. They fought all over the place. They fought into this little fake merchandise stand they set up just to get knocked over.
There was like 4 T-shirts out, and it was just kind of funny.
Yeah, and they used like parts of the table as weapons afterwards. They found a shovel somewhere.
They were using the table. Like, they didn't set the table up. At one point, one of the Nasty Boys picked up a table and hit somebody else with it.
Yeah, he was just bonking people in the noggin with the table. Like, he was holding the table like by the edges, upside down, with it balanced on his head, and just bonking people with it.
And I know it was a plastic shovel, but when Foley took it straight to the face while he was on the ground, I don't care if it's plastic or not. That shit hurts.
Yeah, there were some really brutal moments in this. It was nasty, not to make a pun, but yeah, it was. I do not like the Nasty Boys at all. I think they were awful workers. I don't think they were probably actually great human beings. I didn't care for them any which way, but this was a great little match. It was pretty short. It was only like 8.5 minutes, but
I think it was the shortest on the card, wasn't it?
I think the opening match was the shortest. This was next shortest. Yes.
Which, I mean,
Just
still,
under 9, sorry.
Still, for being just under 9 minutes, they did quite a bit in that time.
Yeah, and unlike some WCW hardcore matches we've seen where they end up going in the back and you don't see stuff, or they're just mostly sitting in the ring and not really doing much. This was almost entirely outside of the ring and really, like, it looked like a fight.
I'm almost positive the pin happened outside of the ring too.
Oh yeah, the pin happened on the floor next to that raised entry ramp.
Yeah. So they did quite a bit.
Yeah.
It was entertaining.
Really good, really well done by everyone in it. So Max Payne, I don't think really did much. It was mostly Mick Foley and the Nasties.
Which, I mean, makes sense.
Shocking, yep. All right, next up this is a special little thing. So this was our WCW United States Heavyweight Championship match. Our champion, Stunning Steve Austin.
A.K.A.
Steve Austin?
Stone Cold.
Well, it's Steve Austin. Do we really need the moniker for everyone to figure out that part of it?
Yes.
All right. Versus the Great Muta.
When I saw that this was on this card, I got very excited.
So we're both big Muta fans. I was a big Steve Austin fan from like the Stunning Steve Austin days.
I can only imagine because this one match, I think I've maybe seen 2 Stunning Steve Austin matches. They're both fantastic.
And it's so different when you're used to Stone Cold.
Very true. The only thing that's the same is he still has that goofy ass walk.
Oh,
like
his little strut.
The tough guy walk.
Yeah. So much a different point in Austin's career. He was very, very technical at this point in time. Very little brawling. He had a submission, a spinning toe hold that he used called Hollywood and Vine, is still a throwback to his Hollywood Blonde gimmick. He was accompanied by Robert Parker, which was
dumb,
butt-ass awful. But then we had Muta. This was Muta's first appearance in about a year. It would be his last appearance for about a year. Muta's relationship with WCW was flaky.
But the guy got probably the second biggest pop of the night.
Oh, it was huge. And it's Muta. The way he kind of carried this air of mystique around him. And like Bobby Heenan even said, he's like, this is the first time I've ever seen this guy. And Tony, they put him over on announcements so huge.
Yeah, and I think what helped was the gear that he comes out in to start the match.
Oh, yeah, that robe and hood.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden he takes it off and he's just got this crazy face paint on. It's like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah, Muta was I forgot we didn't actually even see the mist in this match.
Nope, there was no mist.
Which was kind of odd, as that was definitely his signature thing for a long time. But this was, I bet the thinking was that's a heel thing to do, and this was babyface Muta. So,
yep,
unbeknownst to everyone, they would have popped huge if he had spit the mist in someone's face.
Very true.
Because that was always the biggest thing for him.
We didn't even get the Shining Wizard in this.
No, I think this actually may have been before he was doing the Shining Wizard.
It was. He started the Shining Wizard in '97.
Oh, so yeah, definitely down the road from this.
Still my favorite move in all of wrestling.
It's a great move. But so yeah, this was a great match. There were just so many things that you don't normally see out of Steve Austin, and it was a great wrestling match between him and Muta.
You got the technical stuff. You got the high-flying stuff. You did get some brawling stuff in there.
Well, yeah, because it was kind of Austin being a little bit... It was more of like done as a tough guy thing than like the brawler style, but it was because Muta was a martial artist too.
Yeah.
And he was hitting all of his strikes. And so let's go back to what you disliked about the finish here.
Okay, so at one point... Well, at the end, Muta sends Steve Austin over the top rope.
Austin comes running at Muta. Muta back body drops him over the top rope to the floor.
Muta gets DQ'd.
Yup.
And then Muta turns around and crossbodies over the top rope to the outside.
Yep. He's slingshots himself over.
So I dislike this ending, especially for somebody like Muta, who... not always doing the high-flying stuff, but would do it.
Yeah.
I mean, hence the slingshot over the top rope.
Right.
To me, it doesn't work for his character to be hindered by something like that.
So, here's my best explanation I can give you about this rule. So at the time, there was a rule in WCW where you could not throw your opponent over the top rope or you would be disqualified. It was a really good thing for when you wanted you needed someone to lose, but you didn't want them to lose cleanly. You didn't want them to get pinned or whatever. You could have the babyface get disqualified by, such as in this case, quote unquote, accidentally throwing the heat. Like, this was more like Muta just happened to be near the ropes when Austin came at him, and he just happened to do the back body drop. It wasn't like he was intentionally trying to maliciously chuck this guy over the top rope to hurt him real bad. It was just unfortunate. It lets Muta still look great while the heel gets his sneaky win. It also, in cases when, if the referee's back was turned, the heel could throw the babyface over the top rope, he got away with breaking the rules. It gave them an extra thing to both get a loss that still made everyone look good, and it was an extra thing that the heels could use to get heat. That said, given that this was Muta's only match within a 3-year span in WCW, that really kind of sucked, because what would have been awesome is, okay, what will happen is, let's have Stunning Steve. Okay, he barely escaped beating Muta. Muta accidentally back body drops him. Okay, now we have to have another match to kind of make up for this fluke thing. Okay, we'll do another thing where maybe Austin intentionally chucks Muta over the top rope to get himself DQ'd to keep his belt. Okay, now we're going to have a third and final match. Let's put them inside of a steel cage.
Would have been so much better if they played it that way. It would have been even better if they played it whereas after Muta back body drops, instead of just doing the slingshot and then Stunning Steve running to the back, let Muta beat him up a little bit more.
Yeah. Give the fans a little bit more there. That would have worked too.
It just seemed like it was lacking at the end.
Yeah, that's totally fair. The aftermatch stuff was a little abrupt. I'll give you that. The finish in and of itself, I was totally fine with. Like I said, it would have been nice if it led into a longer program for these guys.
I mean, anytime we get more Muta is better.
More Muta, more Stunning Steve.
Yeah.
So, speaking of Stunning Steve, it wouldn't be within the next year, but it would be within the next year and a half. He would be gone from WCW.
And when he debuted in WWF, he still had the hair for a short time, did he not?
He had it much shorter cut, but yes, he still had hair for a little while. That's when he debuted as the Ringmaster. They even did refer to him, which I don't remember this because I was definitely watching back then. I don't remember them referring to him as Steve Austin, but everything I've read said they did. I don't know about that, but
I'm pretty sure it was one of those when Ricky the Dragon Steamboat was in WWF, he was the Dragon.
And every once in a while, someone might call him Ricky Steamboat.
Yes.
Fair enough.
Steve Austin was the Ringmaster. I'm thinking Marvel on the brain.
Yeah.
He was the Ringmaster, but every now and then it would be, oh, yeah, that Steve Austin guy.
Yeah. And then he would ditch DiBiase as his manager, shave his head, and then start going by Stone Cold and doing kind of the assassin hitman gimmick. And I think that worked out well for everyone involved.
Yeah. I don't think we need to really worry about explaining what happened with Steve Austin after this.
Muta would keep going back to New Japan, keep becoming a massive star in New Japan. Every once in a while, show back up over in WCW.
Arguably, aside from nowadays with Okada and Kenny, probably the top 5 biggest.
Yeah, in top 5, there's Fujinami, Tenzan, but Muta is, if you're doing a Mount Rushmore of
New Japan,
Muta's easily on there.
Yeah.
All right. Next match, also super good, but is going to get us into a really confusing talk. It was for the WCW International World Heavyweight Championship.
This was Sting versus Rick Rude.
Correct.
Really good. I forgot how good Rude is.
Right. Rick Rude, so good. This was probably pinnacle Surfer Sting time. Yeah. I don't think it really got any better for him than this era, this couple of years. After this, Hogan would be coming in soon. He'd get kind of shoved back down the card by default, which was super stupid.
until he comes back as Crow Sting.
Exactly. So, right, this was like pinnacle surfer Sting. Bleach blonde, face paint, super bright colors. You know, John Cena of the early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, as he should be. He was apparently pushing merch like nobody else's business.
The character was basically made to move merch. So, this match, super good. Before the match starts, Harley Race comes out and says, whoever wins, Vader is going to kill you.
Cool.
Right? That's a nice thing to have hanging over your head. It's like,
right.
Wait, do I want to win this if Vader's going to come and just try to destroy me?
So, again, this was for the WCW International Heavyweight title.
The WCW International World Heavyweight Championship.
Such a confusing, dumb name.
So, let's get into this a little bit here. So, this is not the WCW International Championship, much like there's the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship. This was the World Heavyweight Championship for a fictional company called WCW International.
Yep.
So the deal here was in 91 when Ric Flair left WCW and took the belt and left.
This was when he went to WWF for the first time.
Correct. Brought the big gold belt with him because of reasons. WCW then created their own championship, the WCW Heavyweight Championship.
Which was the, kind of similar to all of their other ones with the blue and the
right,
the
almost
oval design.
Almost kind of similar to the old 80s, early 90s WWF Championship.
Yes.
Looked similar.
Very similar.
It wasn't the big gold belt. So Flair does that. WCW sues, gets the title back eventually. There's a whole thing now where now the WCW belt, because WCW and the NWA have split technically at this point, the WCW Heavyweight Championship is not the NWA title. However, the big gold belt is still recognized as the NWA title, and that's when they also co-brand it as the WCW International title.
Huh.
I don't know. It gets the WCW International Heavyweight Championship is only it's changed. There's 7 champs total in the span of 2 to 3 years. It would go to Japan a lot. That was the whole NWA part of it. Eventually, WCW started doing the international thing with it. NWA got PO'd again, and
they ended up going back to using the old school belt, the design that they're using now.
Right. I don't know like you said, I've tried reading this. I still can't make heads or tails of it. I've seen flowcharts. I've seen graphs. I've read Wikipedia articles.
It just plain doesn't make sense.
I don't necessarily understand the lineage of these titles. One of them was created at one point in time. The other one kind of had the NWA lineage with it. Eventually, later on in 94, they would end up getting merged. So that's the important thing. They were both major belts, though.
Yep. They were like the main card belts. Again, I believe it's after this match, there's one more, and then it ends up being Sting versus Flair to merge the belts. And
No. So what would happen? I'm pretty sure it's Vader versus Flair to merge the belts. So what would happen is shortly, and if I'm wrong, feel free to tell me. What would happen shortly after this match is, so Sting wins the belt from Rick Rude here. It ends in slightly iffy fashion because Harley Race and Vader get involved. Did you find the...
Yep. So Sting wins the belt from Rude.
Yep.
Rude then wins it back about a month later.
Kind of.
Rude's victory is reversed due to the use of the belt as a weapon. Sting's reinstated as champion with an unbroken title reign.
Which Sting then says isn't cool. I want to have a match with Vader to earn the title back.
Yep. Sting then defeats Vader for the vacant title in the same night.
I was wrong.
And then Clash of Champions 17.
Sure.
Clash of the Champions 17. Sting and Flair unify the belt.
Okay. So I was wrong. Was Sting. So let's rewind that a little bit to where Rick Rude wins it again.
Yep.
Quote unquote, using the belt as a weapon. This was actually in Japan where this happened.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this would be Rick Rude's last match because the issue wasn't that Rick Rude used the belt as a weapon. The issue was Sting suplexed Rick Rude on the outside where there was a little step on the where the ring was on a raised platform.
This is when he broke his neck, right?
Didn't break his neck. Badly injured his spine.
That's what it was.
Yeah, he did a suplex on the outside, and like I said, the ring was on a slightly raised platform. It was maybe 3 to 4 inches off the ground.
Just enough to
It was
bend
just
you
enough
in an
that
awkward way.
if you take a suplex right where right about where your shoulder blades are, lands right on that. That would be Rick Rude's last match ever.
That makes the apron powerbomb that KO does seem just a little bit more painful.
Yeah, seeing as it's close to the career-ending thing Rick Rude hit.
Yeah.
So there's actually a big whole other thing dealing with Rick Rude that we can cover if you want, but it's about him trying to get back into the business. So, anywho, yeah, that was the end of Rick Rude's career. They were going to give Sting the belt back because, oh crap, the guy that just won the belt just got a career-ending injury during the match.
Right.
So they had to come up with a storyline, strip him of it, yada yada yada. So, yeah, I mean, this match was really, really good again. Anything with Rick Rude is going to be pretty good. And Sting's never been the best worker, but he brought so much energy and he brought the crowd into things that...
Yeah, I would say Surfer Sting wasn't the best worker.
Fair enough. Well, young Sting. He just got better as he got older and learned the business better.
Because Crow Sting is, I would argue, probably one of the best workers WCW produced.
Fair point. Yeah, Surfer Sting was just... He was a little green still. Well, not green necessarily, but yeah, his gimmick, I think, was a little limiting because he did a lot of hulking up, a lot of no-selling of things, and his offense was a little bit more limited back then.
He was the original Hulk Hogan of WCW, and then Hulk Hogan showed up and, well...
Ruh-roh.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, really good match. Champion would, of course, be challenged by Vader later.
I would argue that if anybody wants to see prime Rick Rude, this would be the match to watch.
Oh, definitely. Oh, let's actually cover the finish of the match just because was a bit of a thing. Mm-hmm. What ends up happening is, Harley Race came out at the very beginning, went to blindside Sting. Sting caught him and cracked him one. Then Rude and Sting have their match. End of the match, Harley Race comes back out, grabs a chair. Vader comes out, also grabs a chair. Everyone's kind of busy making sure no shenanigans go down. Eventually, Rick Rude gets a hold of Sting, goes to put him in the Rude Awakening, which is just a neck breaker. Sting sees Harley Race coming up to crack him with a chair, gets out of the way, so Harley Race cracks Rick Rude in the back of the head with a chair. Sting pops Harley Race, knocks him out of the ring, gets the pin, 1, 2, 3, new champion.
Yep. Again, kind of a goofy way to do the end of the match. It seemed like it seemed like everything that was supposed to end the match happened very quickly, right at the end.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit rushed, kind of right there in the end, but it was a really good match between these two guys. I liked everything they did. It was good.
It was a fun match to watch.
All right, next we had the bunkhouse match.
Why call it that? I get because of whatever the hell the other guy's name was, bunkhouse whatever.
Bunkhouse Buck.
So dumb. So dumb.
Yeah.
Why don't you just call it another street fight match?
I think that's probably wise, because there's just enough difference in their gimmicks where they wanted to make it sound a little bit more southern. So, because it was Dustin Rhodes and Bunkhouse Buck. Both guys kind of had a cowboy gimmick, basically. The natural Dustin Rhodes, I'll say.
So, pick a town or a city somewhere in the South and do a such and such street fight.
Yeah, wrestling. I'm trying to figure the word out. Etiquette. Wrestling etiquette dictates you don't do kind of the same thing unless the entire pay-per-view is built around. Like, you can do a Money in the Bank thing. You can have multiple Money in the Bank matches. You can have multiple TLC matches at TLC. This wasn't anything special about this one, so they wanted to differentiate it a little bit. And not to mention, for the bunkhouse match, they typically stayed in the ring and just used weapons, whereas the street fight, they went outside of the ring. So
So no DQ match. I don't know. Call me a fantasy booker, or
Then you're just getting hung up on a name.
call me the worst booker ever. But
All right. Anyways, these two guys whipped the shit out of each other.
yeah, they did. It was at points hard to watch because of how
brutal it was.
Yeah.
It was Dustin Rhodes and Bunkhouse Buck. At points, they were taking their belts off and just whipping the piss out of each other.
Yeah, and I mean, especially after Dustin bladed or got cut at some point.
Yeah.
And was just that was one of the worst blade jobs I'd ever seen because of how badly he was bleeding.
So Dustin kind of has one of the benefits that Flair has, where they both have like that platinum blonde hair that when they're bleeding, it looks like they're bleeding everywhere.
Yep. I mean, him, Dusty, Cena always had the really bad ones too.
Yeah. But, yeah, just, again, a really, really good match where two guys were legitimately look like they were just beating the ever-loving hell out of each other.
And I wish I had seen, I might go back and watch more of it now that he's not in WWE anymore. More of the natural Dustin Rhodes. Because it was entertaining.
He wasn't bad, but there was definitely, he was that white meat babyface, and there wasn't a lot there.
He doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, he doesn't need a lot there for the character if I'm rewatching it.
That's fair.
I want to see more of his matches.
That's fair. He was good in the ring.
Because, again, even when he shows up to WWF as Goldust,
which he would within about a year from this,
I would say one of the most underrated wrestlers to ever come into WWF.
Easily. And we've said it before, it's a shame he never got a real world title opportunity, at least. Like, he never got an extended program that got him to that level.
Yeah. And again, anytime I get to see that snap suplex, always
and that slam that he does.
Yep.
All right. We actually forgot to mention the Cactus Jack would be going to WWE and becoming Mankind. Well, he and Austin would both take a detour through ECW, but within the next 2 years, they would both be in WWE as well.
So let's pause for a second and count. We
sure.
have
let's go from the very start. Opening match: Johnny B. Bad versus DDP.
We have Mark Marrow, who's there in probably 2 years.
Within 2 years. Next, we had Lord Steven Regal versus Brian Pillman.
Regal didn't show up until 98, I read.
98, 99, but Pillman would be there sooner.
Yep.
Also making a detour through ECW.
So we have two guys there.
We have the Nasty Boys versus Cactus Jack and Max Payne.
So that's one within a year and a half.
Max Payne would actually end up in WWE as Man Mountain Rock and have an awful teeny tiny run very shortly after this.
Okay, so 5 guys, we'll count it.
Sure. Next up, Steve Austin versus Muta.
So there's one for a year and a half and then ends his career there.
Yep. And then we had Sting versus Rude. The fifth match on the card was the first one where we didn't have anyone that jumped ship soon. Well,
yeah.
Rude kind of did, but again, not as a wrestler.
Yeah, and Sting wouldn't for another, I don't
2
know.
decades?
Yeah.
All right. Next, we had Bunkhouse Buck versus Dustin Rhodes.
So, Dustin within a year and a half.
Yep.
I don't know anything about Bunkhouse Buck.
So the only time that I know of that he would show up on WWE television would be playing the role of Jack Swagger's dad.
Really?
Yeah, very odd little piece of trivia there on him. But yeah, he never really did anything in wrestling of note outside of this Bunkhouse Buck character. But yeah, he would appear on WWE TV.
Huh. Interesting.
Yep. All right. Next match up was like some sort of grudge. It was billed as a grudge match. It was apparently, again, no DQ, but I don't think it was ever officially announced as a no DQ.
Was it a grudge match or was it just a big guy match?
It was I think it was actually called a grudge match.
Okay.
So it was Vader versus the Boss.
So again, one guy who would end up in WWF within what?
A year or two.
Yeah.
Very soon.
The Boss, aka Big Boss Man.
Yep.
This, based on Big Boss Man alone, had no reason to be as good as it was.
This was really good. Again, Vader and the Boss beat the ever-loving piss out of each other.
Yeah, and there was quite a bit of there was quite a bit of big moves too.
Yeah. Vader did like a tope over the top rope he just jumped over the top rope at one point from the raised ring ramp back into the ring. It was crazy good.
Yeah. And you had the moments where Boss Man would slam Vader, and it was like, holy crap, that he just picked up that mountain of a man.
Well, Boss Man was a huge guy. So we're calling him Boss Man. His character was, quote unquote, the boss. He was known as a correctional officer. He had handcuffs and a nightstick. This would be the last time he would ever be called the boss.
Yeah, because he would move to... Was this his second run in WCW, or is this still his first?
It's technically his second run in WCW.
Because he was... Who was it before?
He was just Big Bubba before.
That's right. Then he jumps to WWF.
Becomes the boss man.
Comes back to WCW.
As the boss.
Goes back to WWF.
Nope. So he would be in WCW as the boss. Get stripped of that because... So the end of this match, Vader beats him clean. But then Harley Race gets Boss's handcuffs, goes to handcuff him to the ring rope so they can beat him down more. Boss stops them, manages to get his nightstick, and then takes the nightstick and gives Harley Race and Vader a whooping. By doing so, I forgot who the head, J.J. Dillon. J.J. Dillon, the on-screen commissioner of WCW, would be forced to strip him of all of his handcuffs, of his nightstick, and as far as he was concerned, he's no longer the boss. So he would have this awful gimmick where he was a man without a name, but the Guardian Angels would come out and scout him, and eventually he became the Guardian Angel.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, it was pretty stupid. The reason was WWF sued them for using the boss character. Like, nope, too close. Copyright infringement.
That's fantastic.
Yep, so that's why he had to stop using the name The Boss, and they made him into the Guardian Angel. Then, after that whole crap, he would bounce back over to WWE and become part of the corporation where he was basically wearing the Shield's gear.
Yeah, and had his nightstick back.
Yep, sure did. Yeah, again, this was a good match of two big guys, just big old hoss match.
And it's another one of those where I forget how good Vader was.
Oh yeah, Vader was so good.
And he was the original Brock Lesnar because he was
original. If you want your by the numbers classical definition of a monster heel, Vader all the way.
Yep. Especially because he could move as quickly as he could, which didn't seem possible.
A 450-pound guy moving pretty quick. One of his finishes is a moonsault.
Yeah.
And a good look, like not even like that weird kind of like sidewards one that a lot of big guys do. A legit moonsault.
Yeah, I mean his would be. It wasn't as high of a arc as Kurt Angle's.
No,
but still, he got all the way around very smoothly.
Right, but he's a 450-pound guy hitting a moonsault
and landed exactly where he should be every time.
Exactly. So, if your thing is watching two big dudes look like they're beating the legitimate crap out of each other,
here's your match.
That's your match. All right. Final match of the night for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship.
5 stars. 5 stars. I don't care what Meltzer says. 5 stars.
So, I'm shocked that we got a 5-star match out of these two guys. So it was Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat.
5 stars.
Yeah, it was an amazing match.
I mean, they probably got 4 stars just from their names.
Right. So this is not part of their classic trilogy back from the 80s. This was just, I don't know if they just didn't have a great opponent for Flair at the time. So they decided, and Ricky had been kind of bouncing around doing awful tag teams with random other guys. I think Shane Douglas, probably Dustin at some point.
Yeah, and they were, I think they were holding off on doing anything major with Flair until they could unify the belts.
That probably was a lot of it. So they it was a placeholder match as far as like storylines go.
Best damn placeholder match that has ever happened.
Right. That was one of those things where I think WCW knew they had it hidden in their back pocket, and just whenever the time was right, let's pop this thing out.
Well, yeah, I mean that's like one of those like WWF. Oh, well, we need a headliner match. put Taker and Shawn against each other.
Yeah. It was one of those things, they had it in their back pocket. They knew they could bring it out when they needed it. And at this point in time, they needed it. And that's really one of the big things that puts this pay-per-view over as probably one of the best WCW pay-per-views ever, honestly.
Because of this match.
Right. As far as pure in-ring action goes, yeah, Bash at the Beach 96 where the NWO is officially and Hogan turns. And as far as like big moments in wrestling history, not a lot of moments for this one. But I love watching like the wrestling part of pro wrestling.
This would be it.
This is it. I don't think WCW ever got any better overall than this. Overall, it was probably their strongest card.
Oh, easily. This again is one of those matches, kind of like you were saying. If you want to watch a quote unquote wrestling clinic,
oh yeah,
this if you're gonna try to start wrestling or need to learn how to tell a story or anything like that in the ring, here you go.
Right. And this match was kind of, it had what was typically referred to as the dusty finish. Well, not really a dusty, but close to, where ends up Ricky puts Flair in the double chicken wing, which is like it's the setup to a glam slam.
Yeah, exactly.
But so puts him in the double chicken wing, picks him up. Flair's not quitting, so he bridges back to pin Flair, except both men's shoulders are down, so they both get counted out. There's a bunch of confusion, and Flair actually ends up getting stripped of the world title.
Shocking.
They don't give it to Ricky because he didn't technically win, but they're like, hey, both these guys lost this match technically, therefore neither of them get the belt.
You both suck, so you both lose.
You both suck. Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, you both suck.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever been said to anybody.
No,
to those two guys out of anybody's mouth.
But it was good. It was a good storyline to kind of float them through this point in time because, as I was saying earlier, this was a rough point in WCW history. It's really, honestly amazing that they got this card out of the talent that they had.
Yeah.
They had a lot of talent, but it was just a rough point in their business. They had been hemorrhaging money to the tune of millions of dollars a year. They had been kept afloat by the fact that Ted Turner was rich as hell and could afford to do so because he wanted to own a wrestling company.
Yeah, I think this early on, it wasn't to compete with the WWF. I think Ted Turner just liked having a wrestling company.
Right, but the problem was we were kind of at the point where the Turner organization didn't. And we're starting to get to the point in time where corporate America is becoming much more of a thing, and you can't run your giant corporation based purely on the whims of your
CEO.
Mildly eccentric owner.
Yeah.
So Eric Bischoff was in charge, and apparently at this point in time, a lot of guys were being asked to take a 20% pay cut.
Good grief.
And
well, I mean, I guess that's why we had 7 guys jump.
Well, keep in mind, they cut Austin. Austin didn't even willfully jump. He was forced out. Keep in mind, there were also now the rumor mill was turning that Hogan's coming in. Hogan was being paid $500,000 for each pay-per-view he was at, whereas guys on the card that were making, $250,000 a year were being asked to take a 20% pay cut.
Yeah, and $500,000 in 1994 is quite a bit of money.
Yeah, $500,000 is a lot of money now.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, they even brought up Hogan on this,
right?
Because they something about how still kind of the feud that him and Flair were having.
Right, I believe Hogan had signed some sort of weird deal he had signed a deal to make movies with Turner to be on like TNT and on TBS. Which, boy, there's a goal to shoot for.
Right.
Made for TV movies for TNT. Woo!
You've hit the big time, kid.
Made it. But he wasn't signed to WCW yet because I'm betting what had happened was there was a giant no-compete clause that he had to work through.
Yeah, and Flair kept talking about, or Bobby kept talking about how Flair invited Hogan to sit ringside and see his title matches.
Yeah. So, overall, what would you rate this?
This card or this match?
This pay-per-view.
I would have given it a solid B+, A-.
Yeah, like 85, 90 out of 100.
Yeah, easily.
I'm about to say the only thing, honestly, it probably gets marked down for is the fact that their storylines, honestly, weren't that strong.
Yeah, and because Muda lost.
Yeah, fair enough. Oh, going back to one other thing that we had mentioned previously about how WCW is awful at doing their promo packages and that WWF was amazing at. So this one did at least have a video package.
It had one.
Yes, it had one video package at the very start that summarized every feud for the entire evening, which that's a little disjointed.
In like a minute and a half.
Yeah, it really kind of rushed through and crammed everything together. So overall, the pro part of pro wrestling, as opposed to the wrestling part of pro wrestling, the pro part of pro wrestling was the weakest part of this event. But
this was the epitome of a workhorse or a work rate
pay-per-view. Yeah, definitely. All right. Oh, we forgot to do plugs earlier. We'll get to those in a minute.
We can get to those in a minute.
Yeah, before we get there, I want to encourage everyone, if you haven't seen it yet from more recent wrestling stuff.
I'm so glad you're bringing this up.
Yes. Everyone needs to go watch Firefly Funhouse.
Bray Wyatt coming back as Mr. Rogers.
As creepy something is wrong, Mr. Rogers.
By far the best. This, 3-minute package?
It was like 2.5. Yeah. 2 to 3 minutes.
The best, I guess you would call it vignette.
Yep.
The best one WWE has put out since like 2000.
I would almost say longer. I have not been so captivated, so interested in anything in pro wrestling probably since Bret Hart's first championship run. Like, literally since I was a kid and didn't know pro wrestling was pro wrestling.
Yeah. I for me, it would probably be since Edge speared Cena and won the title for the first time.
Fair, yeah. The storytelling they're doing with the Bray Wyatt character now, I don't know. They could drop the ball on this next week, and I'll still be happy they at least gave us this first thing. I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to do it right. I hope they do.
I hope so.
I could see so many ways for them to go with this, but it is so far absolutely brilliant and creepy, and I hope it gets creepier but bright. Like, I hope it becomes almost brighter and cheerier, but creepier at the same time.
Give me the horror movie that Bray Wyatt was supposed to be.
Yes.
But also give me the cheery part that Bo Dallas was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. I desperately want them to bring Bo Dallas into this. If they don't, totally fine. I totally understand it. I would love to see this happy, cheery Bray Wyatt once again attracting followers, but in a happy, smiley way now, with Bo Dallas right there cheering him on, telling him to remember to believe in himself, but kind of really whispering really heavily into Bray's ear. And I want to see the Wyatt family reformed under kind of Bray's leadership, but with Bo really kind of leading from the shadows.
Yeah.
And then I want it to get weird and dark and evil and malicious. And then I want to see a lot of different stars not even realize that they're starting to use Bray's language and Bo's language in their promos. And then eventually they've been sucked into this weird cult too.
I don't know if it'll ever go that far.
I don't think it will, but I would love it to. And eventually I want to see such a huge Wyatt family that it ends up getting split. And it's Bo is almost like the Joker of just, he's a psychopath. And now he's kind of pulled off the rubber mask. And now he's just crazy and evil. Versus Bray, who's just kind of like dark and brooding.
I mean, Bo's definitely got the creepy smile to be a Joker.
He could be like the creepy, awful motivational speaker. Think of it almost like some creepy multi-level marketing, like indoctrination crap, where like this guy's really trying to sell you on this product and sell you on this lifestyle, and then you actually see how twisted and evil the guy is behind it all.
Again, I don't think it's going to go that far. It'll be cool to see no matter what they do.
Fully agree. That's my fan booking dream, but
everybody needs to go and watch the Firefly Funhouse.
Right. Watch Firefly Funhouse. Go watch it on YouTube. Give it hits, just because the more popular that gets, the more WWE will give them the freedom and go with it.
Get this shit over.
Yes, get this over. WWE's been doing a lot of good things. Been doing some things lately, but more good than bad, definitely. And this.
Yeah.
All right.
Plugs.
Gmail. Email us. Tell us what you think at wrestlinghistory@gmail.com.
Twitter, we're at WrestleHistPod.
We are on Facebook at This Week in Wrestling History.
You got Spotify, you got Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher,
all sorts of places.
Google us and you'll find it.
And do we have Instagram? No. We are more active on Twitter these days. We're trying to be.
Yeah, I kind of stopped doing that for a bit.
Now I have it. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah, don't. If you tweet at us, don't get mad if you get a response.
You've been warned. All right. Anything else?
Nope.
We're history.